Hopefully, hopefully that contracting space is a lot more optimized for the technology space. I think 3 years in government terms is long enough to be able to help evolve that. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case along with everybody else. Um, I think our priorities are going to be probably very similar to what they are now. We're just going to be getting closer to those time frames on the AI side and the quantum side that are going to be true game changers. Because the other thing about quantum, as you probably are well aware, and a lot of other folks are probably well aware of, which is really relevant on the intelligence side, is once that power and speed of quantum comes online, all of that information that's being collected can now be broken. That encryption can now be broken.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jake again. Welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon podcast. We're having a good time here, and this week we have a very different, interesting guest with Joe Coffey. I'm going to let Joe talk a little bit about his resume, but I've been able to spend some time with Joe over the past year. Joe is a retired career. He was an SCS at the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. Has a great career. He was in the test and evaluation, I think is the T&E. I could say the T&E side over at CIA. So he has a very, very strong and interesting technology background. If you watch James Bond movies, in every episode, every movie, James Bond goes to that secret room and Q is there with all the gadgets, the exploding pen, the car that disappears and all those things. And I think that's kind of what Joe did when he's working the government. So Joe, welcome to our podcast. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jake. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Some of you may have met Joe at some of our matchmaking events, but he's got a great personality and just incredible experience. So we're looking forward to getting know you a little bit better today, Joe.
I'm looking forward to the conversation also.
He's also posted as a precision expert. It's even on his LinkedIn profile. So if you want to work with Joe, reach out. We can get you guys set up. Joe, give us real quick your 30-second bio overview so people know that you are a credible, knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, so I spent my career in CIA in the Directorate of Science and Technology to about 26 years, and I just retired about a year ago. It's been about half of my career doing operations worldwide, and about a third of my career doing analytical tool development and infrastructure development, and about another third to a quarter doing other unique jobs like an executive assistant, going to the D&I, working budget issues, policy issues, and work with National Security Council. And one of the other unique roles that I did was working with a multi-billion-dollar commercial company and managing a relationship, but also helping understand how to get their technology into the government, but also helping them understand what the government needs from them, or the agency in this case.
I mean, you got all kinds of differentiators, and that one you talked about going out west to Silicon Valley and embedding with a major tech company. I want to dig into that one later on the episode. That's fascinating. Of those thirds, which third did you enjoy the most, would you say?
So of those thirds, well, operations are the lifeblood of what makes the organization fun. You're overseas. Most of the time you're overseas, or you're traveling overseas. You're doing something covert, working with a foreign partner. You're doing what the agency is built to do. Besides the informing the policymakers, which is ultimately what the agency, one of the major things they do. But to gather the information, whether it's from a human, whether it's from a technical collection or a cyber or SIGINT collection, doing those operations and pulling together the human components, the technical components, and bringing that all together is, it's just like what movies are made of.
Fun stuff, right? The rest is necessary, the technology and the R&D and the policy, but I imagine being out there is the fun stuff.
Absolutely, at least for me.
Yeah, great. Well, look, before we get into that, let's I know there are a lot of members in our community that do work in the IC, and some with CIA or other agencies. I know we support a lot of companies in that area. But let's go back. Let's get to know Joe a little bit. You're a Florida guy. Talk a little bit about growing up, what shaped you as a person, and how you eventually wound up getting into government.
So I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, Central East Coast, small town. So it's just a little bit south of Melbourne. A lot of people know Melbourne and the Cape. So about 45 to an hour and a half from the Cape. It was just a great growing up. Loved being on the beach. I loved playing sports. I loved surfing. So anything being outside, being active, was really what I was all about, hanging out with my friends and just enjoying the weather. I think sports is a really major contributing factor to what's shaped me throughout my life. And it's one of the things I really focus on with my kids. And then also being a coach for some of the teams here is the skills that playing sports teaches you is it teaches you to win, lose, all within matters of seconds, minutes, and within a game, no matter whether you ultimately win or not. It teaches you how to do teamwork, teaches you how to go through adversarial moments and games and deal with mistakes and failure. So that was a big, I think, shaping point for me. And I just love sports throughout my life. So that was pretty much my upbringing in Florida.
Now, you were a baseball player was your main claim to fame, right?
Yeah. So once I got to high school, you can only play so many sports at one time. I was at a big school. So I ended up playing baseball and basketball. And then I went to college to play baseball, started in junior college for 2 years, and then ended up at Florida Institute of Technology, FIT, in Melbourne, Florida, for 3 years. I got redshirted my first year.
Were you a second baseman? I'm just guessing here.
No, I was a pitcher in outfield.
Pitcher and outfield.
Yeah.
Wasn't much of a baseball.
Yeah. It's a long game.
They made it shorter now. It's a little bit more digestible, but
yeah.
I like what you say about what sports teaches. I think it teaches you a lot about business too, right? The winning and the losing and the prep and the practice and the rehearsals. And I think it's absolutely, it's good for everybody to be involved in sports, especially team sports.
Exactly.
How about, did you have family that were military or government? What was your kind of pathway into getting into government?
Yeah. So I growing up, I had really never focused on the government or the military. Coming out of high school, I looked at the military as just an option. But it wasn't ultimately something I really wanted to do. So my dad had been in the military for a couple of years, but it wasn't really a military career or anything like that. And it wasn't until my junior year, the CIA came to a job fair at school. And so I was looking for an internship between my junior and senior year. And I just went up and talked to him. I was kind of curious. And I was like, oh, you guys do technology? Well, I had no idea. I never paid attention to that. And so they're like, yeah, give us your resume. We'd love to have a conversation with you. So I did an on-site interview. And then they said, we'd love to
On-site
you up to DC.
On-site in Florida.
At school, at the school.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they said, we'd like to fly you up to DC and have you do interviews up there. And this was I was in my junior year. They said an internship is not going to happen, or a co-op as we call it. It's just there's not enough time to go through the security clearance process to make that happen, and they require you to do usually two overtime anyways. So I was like, okay, yeah, man, what do I got to lose? I'll take a trip to DC and go for it. And I show up at headquarters to go to my interview, and I'm walking around, and there's guys walking around with guns and everything. I'm like, man, this is so surreal. And I get taken into this conference room, and I had multiple meetings, but ultimately with the place where I went to, they bring me into a conference room. The lights are dim. There's about 5 or 6 people around the table. Everybody is very serious. We're going through these very not bold, but black and white sort of boring questions, and I'm answering them. I'm like, man, is this part of the stress test? Are they trying to, like, what's going on? This is like, they're trying to stress me out here. What's going on? And they're like, okay, thank you. The interview's over. If you could just step outside for a moment. It's like, okay, oh, this is about. So I step outside. About 5 minutes goes by. They come in. They say, we'd like to offer you the job. What? I was like, okay, what does that even mean? We hadn't discussed salary or anything like that. And I was like, and they were like, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that, later on. I was like, this is not how job discussions go usually. So I was like, okay, I'll accept the job and conditional offer of employment. And I was sort of off on the running there as far as the security process and all of that.
I thought they were going to lock you in a closet and see if you can get out or something like that.
I have no idea either.
That's cool. Wow. So you went straight out of, you were at Florida Institute of Technology, right? At FIT. You went straight into the CIA after graduating?
Yeah. And while I was at Florida Tech, I studied computer science. So I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, software engineering. And then later on in my career, I did a master's degree in computer security.
Okay. So technology background. So talk about going in the CIA. I mean, I'm all about career transitions. Talk about first few years in the CIA. What's that like for a young man?
It was amazing, to be honest. The amount of responsibility and training that I had gotten in my first 1 to 2 years, I just had never had any idea of how much responsibility they would give me. So the first year, 2 years, I was going through specific technical and operational training, learning how to be able to do the job. But during that time, I was also still doing the job, doing operations, and with mentorship. And then there became a point in time within, the first year and a half, where I was dealing with these high profile blue chip cases and assets. And I was just sat back for one moment at one point in time. And I was just like, I can't believe the amount of responsibility that they're giving me. And it's not just that it's like volume, it's people's lives, that the gear that I'm building and putting together that they're going to use to be able to communicate back securely with us. And it has to work, because some of these folks are going back to environments where we may not see them for another year or 2 years. And if that device that we give them doesn't work, we're not getting their information. Right. And we have these relationships with these people too. We're not just like these other governments where you're blackmailed into working. We build relationships with people. So they're mutual relationships, because that's the best way relationships work.
So you started out putting together technology packages, and at what point did they send you out overseas? And what kind of overseas assignments have you had throughout your career?
Yeah, so within those first 2 years, I was already traveling overseas.
Oh.
And then at the 2-year mark, an opportunity came up where I was able to go overseas to Europe. And I spent 4 years in Europe, traveling to Africa, Europe, Central Eurasia, and the Middle East, doing operations. And during that time, I was in Iraq and Afghanistan very early on, during those times when we went in. But they were very formidable years for me, both from just learning the job and understanding the job and learning the world, living overseas, and how that shapes and changes you as a person if you allow it. to from an engineer mindset to living in parts of Europe where there's no structure to life, and that's the way they live life, and learning how to be able to live in multiple worlds like that.
Did you uh, talk about when you first started dealing with government contractors? A lot of folks in our community are on the other side, on the government contracting side. Talk about your first experiences with government contracting.
Yeah, so going back to my first couple of years, we utilize contractors significantly within the agency. They're critical to everything we do, everything from support to subject matter expertise, because we do such a wide range of things around the world. We can't have the expertise to do everything we need to do, and so we rely on deep expertise from commercial companies to the miters of the world to the labs of the world. We utilize it all because we have to be able to do the hard things that we have to do, and for the gear and technical equipment to survive in the environments that we put it into. So early on, I was handed this case that I had been managing for a while, and they wanted to be able to transmit this amount of information that we just didn't have the capability to do at the time. This is, 1989, 99 timeframe. So the technical infrastructure hadn't gotten to where it is now, so where you could just send volumes of information around the world without raising significant flags on the counterintelligence side. So we ended up working with contractors to develop this system that was very unique. We did it in a year time frame. Developed the system, went overseas, tested the system, and then I was able to deploy the system. And the system was successfully used for many, many years, and able to bring back information that went straight to the president's desk. And so early on in my career, I started working with contractors and really understanding how there are some that really understand the environment and the space and how to work with the staffers. And then there are others that just don't. And there's a very clear, unique difference between those two.
And so how do you become the ones that understand if you're a contractor? How do you get that insight? It must be valuable.
Yeah, it's very interesting because in this last year, as I've been talking to companies and working with companies that I've actually worked with when I was a staffer, who have been in the organization for 20 plus years, they've actually worked in there. They weren't just running companies that work there. Even they don't fully understand a lot of the nuances that happen behind the scene, how the budget gets built. I mean, they understand generally how the budget gets built, but what is the strategy? What is the unique current strategies and priorities? What is the staffing looking like? Where's the money going? How to work within the multiple dynamics inside the agency, because we're not all one type of person. We're a very diverse, unique group of many types of people. So when you talk about an analyst, they're very different from an operations officer, from a technical operations officer, from a support person. And that's by design. They think differently, and that's what you want. You want diverse thought to be able to do what we need to do from an agency perspective. And so I think those dynamics, a lot of people understand surface level, but really understanding how that matters and how to move throughout the agency, those dynamics matter a lot.
When you went to work it was the DST, right?
The DST, Director of Science and Technology, yeah.
Did you get some contracting training on how do you put out a requirement? How do you evaluate it? Did you get some training around that?
Yeah, me specifically, I have. We have the PMs and the COTARs and the contracts officers. That's really their expertise and what they do. I myself, to better understand, also took some of that training, but I've led multiple organizations where we had big contracts, where one of my, on the commercial side was a large IDIQ that I managed for both the company, but also that the community utilized also, the intelligence community and beyond. So yeah, I've managed those contracts and understand that and how that all works internally.
So, I mean, I got to imagine contracting with DST or whatever is different than our normal pulling an RFP off of sam.gov. How do companies get into that space? Is it generally by partnering as a sub and then easing their way in? How do you see most companies coming in and introducing technology and new ideas?
It comes in a lot of different ways. There's everything from the InQtel side where you're getting venture capital investment from InQtel. And a lot of those companies, they don't have, they're pure technologies. They're not built for really working in the government. So they have help from InQtel to help get into the agency that way. It's still hard because they don't know how they're working through somebody who's working through somebody that doesn't have the full context to tell them what they're building and how they're building it and why they're building it. So not having that intimate security clearance conversation makes it really hard to develop what they think. They're developing what they think they need to develop without a lot of communication, which is really complicated. To getting access to the contracts, you do have to have security clearances to get access to some of their contracts, and that's not easy, and that's a lot of
Takes an investment. Yeah. So
yeah, it's a huge investment, and so teaming is a good way to start doing that. Working with some of the other folks that are either primes already, or if you have a technology, finding the right companies that would be able to help you get those technologies in is a way, and that's one of the things I also help help companies find the right companies to get their foot in the door to make sure that that is the direction they want to go and they want to make those investments to get in. But that's one of the things that makes it complicated. And just because you are able to do that, it's still a complex organization. You can't just walk around and talk to people. All the doors are locked. You can't just walk in any door and start having a conversation with anybody. In general, people don't want to have a conversation with you if they don't want to know, because there is a need to know concept that is real. And it's not just with contractors. It's even internally. That's a real thing.
makes business development just double, triply hard, I guess, trying to do work there. So how do you get new technology? How do you get new ideas? This administration's putting so much emphasis on dual use technology instead of government driving requirements to industry bringing to government solutions. But if you're not set up to do business in this kind of extremely compartmentalized and classified space, it's kind of like it'd be great to get all these new ideas. How do you get new technology and new ideas into agencies like the CIA?
It's hard. Similar to a lot of the other things going on in government, there are some contracting things that the agency is working on. The DNI is also working on them to be able to make technology flow a lot faster, and not be slowed down by the bottleneck of contracting. So there are pieces there that they're working on, and just like everybody else, hopefully those break frees like the OTAs and things that like that allow things to move a little bit faster. That will help. That will help companies that already have the access to get in to start doing that. Um, the other way, and this is where I try to help companies, is understand their technologies to be able to really help pinpoint them to where the right places they should go to talk to that actually need the technologies that they have, because to try to go and sell your wares across the agency is a really complicated place. And so really knowing this part of the organization has these needs, and this technology could potentially help with that. That's a good start, because you can go in and have a conversation that's enabled for you. Go in and start having that conversation where you're having a conversation about, you already know this technology works. You're trying to make sure that they two can work together, and then that they're also interested in that they have the money just like anywhere else. So I think that's one of the ways that I try to help people get in is by focusing them on the right places to go, because it's such a big world. It's complicated.
Sure. Yeah, it would seem that companies want to do business in this intel space, the CIA, whatever agency, having someone that knows how to navigate it would be more critical than any other agency within government, where most doors are at least a little bit open. You gotta know where there's a need, and you got to know where the technology is going to fit.
Yeah. No, in my world, you might get a first name, a last initial, and a phone number. Nobody will answer that phone number a lot of times, so it gets really complicated. The other thing, Jake, is I talk a lot about technology because that's what excites me. But the services side, the people and the technical people, those are also very important pieces. A lot of times those do come out from a contract perspective and that's where finding the right teams, finding the right companies that align, that have good synergies, if they don't already have those types of connections, are a good way to get into the organization also. Or going after some of the primes. Just late last year, there was a company that I worked with who had no IC experience. They brought me in. We helped build the right team to put together a proposal, and some of it was just the right timing. They're looking for change, as this administration is, and so we're still waiting to see how that pans out. But that's also one way I've been able to help is on the services side, and helping them understand and being able to gather more information as far as what the requirement really needs and what the challenges are, so they can really scope the contract smartly.
Makes sense. Talk about this time in your career where you had the chance to basically kind of look at the military whenever you get a chance to take the uniform off and go, on a long TDY. Uh, Talk about your chance to go work inside of a major technology firm. To the extent you can, talk about the experience. What were you doing? What did you learn about business and industry in doing that?
Yeah, it was a very unique experience to be able to get inside of a large multi-billion-dollar company, a tech company that is a leader in the world, and understand how they look at the world, um, how they shape their opportunities, how they actively shape their opportunities, um, from a business perspective, from a political perspective, from understanding the politics around the world and how that's going to affect their bottom line, how they're using all of those signals to shape the next 3 to 5 years, even though the technologies that they're doing are cutting edge technologies. The other really unique and interesting part was they know their competitors and foreign governments are actively trying to get their technology, reverse engineer their technology to build their own capabilities. And so understanding their strategy of just staying multiple years ahead of them, knowing that after a couple of years, it's gone. It doesn't matter, but they just got to stay ahead, a couple of years ahead, to continue to build their revenue. And then also seeing them shift as they saw the industry that they're in, they needed to shift and build into other industries to continue to grow. And seeing them do that shift in just the short time that I was with them was really, really interesting. The other thing, working with them from a government perspective and having them try to understand our world, and then they had been in our world for many, many years, so it wasn't like it was a new relationship. But again, there's only so much they can know, and so helping them understand what the world looks like, where the next priorities are for the next couple of years, how that aligns with what their business is and where they're going, so we can start aligning those two strategies. So in a year or 2 years, when those technologies that they're building are coming out, we're able to utilize them a lot faster than, oh, we have a new technology, now we have to spin up for another year,
Yeah.
year and 2 years to reverse engineer that or understand what's happening behind the scenes to then be able to utilize it. Um, that was amazing to see and just really understand the diverse cultures, how to bring those two together so we align on, we have mutual goals. The national strategy is our mutual goals, right? We're both strong American companies and government, and we all want to do the right thing, but we do have different goals ultimately. How do we work together so it's a win-win for everybody?
pretty visionary for the agency to do that, to invest in a resource like you. And I imagine they do it with other firms, not just one firm, because they got to be fair. It's pretty visionary for them to invest in these kind of resources just to stay ahead of the technology, right?
Yeah, and if you look at InQtel, that's what InQtel also was developed to do. It was a U.S. government venture capital partnership to use private money to invest in technologies that the U.S. government can use. So the agency started that. It's now used across the U.S. government, and even some of the Five Eyes partners utilize the methodology. And so that was probably 15-ish, 20 years ago that started. Um, and so there are major companies that have come out of that, and that wasn't their only investment, but it helps.
Fascinating. So let's talk a little bit what's going on right now. You left about a year ago. Like, what's the trend right now in terms of, I mean, there are certainly agencies that are in favor and agencies that are out of favor. I mean, obviously USAID's gone, been absorbed in the State Department. Agencies like HHS and Department of Education are out of favor. The DHSs and Department of War. What's the impact right now? What's the trend on funding, on resourcing for NEIC and for the CIA? This might be a good time for a zinger.
So the budget is classified, so I won't go into those kinds of details. But uh, no matter what's been said throughout the presidencies, other than in the 90s when there was really true big cuts, the agency and the IC is still considered a critical resource for the U.S. government. And so, budgets sort of ebb and flow, and they go up and they go down. And so I think that's just natural government. But the need for what the agency does, what the NSA does, what some of the other intelligence organizations do, they're just unique in everything that we do these days. And with the world only becoming more technological, and still human based, but there's much more of a technological bend to it. It's critical that these organizations stay around. Now, what does change are the priorities. And as you see with this administration, Latin America is a bigger priority than previous administrations. So those things change. That's just normal business. That's changing of the priorities. The same things like the Russias, the Chinas, the North Koreas, all of those are still administration priorities for the right reasons. Maybe different political motivations, but from a intelligence collection perspective, they're more or less the same. Some changes here and there as far as what the collection posture may look like, but more or less the same. I think there are some dynamics related to the contracting, as we talked about earlier, which is good. Everybody's in full agreement, I believe, on how do we make that smarter, better, faster, more efficient, because it is a bottleneck, as we've talked about across the government. Everybody knows this is huge news right now. So those reforms and what will come out of that is potentially really, really important to make things move a lot faster.
And do you feel like if you're a company kind of looking at what markets to invest in, knowing, and some may be already doing business with the agency or in the IC, is this a good time to be investing? Do you see the trend going up? Is this a good time to invest in trying to do more with the agency?
I think it depends on what your goals are. The agency, you don't make as much money inside the agency as you do in other parts of the government, and it's harder. So there has to be a desire and a will and a want to go into the agency. And a lot of people do it because it's an amazing mission to be a part of, and people want to be a part of that. It's hard to get personnel for those missions because of the clearances that are required. So it makes it a little bit more complicated from that perspective also. But to be a part of either from the human side or bringing a technology into solving a major technical challenge or being put in a location that you never thought whatever it is you're building, the software, the hardware would go and be doing and collecting. I mean, those are just things they're not worth money. They're serving the U.S. government, and that's in the U.S. And so that's a big draw for a lot of companies. Also, is that mission.
Seem also with the barriers to entry to get in that market and to stay in that market. You talked about the recruiting challenge. I know because we support a lot of companies in that IC space. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard finding these compartmentalized clearances and the staying on top of if there are companies that are already 2 years ahead on the technology side, like you were helping companies, you got to have pretty strong R&D shops to stay ahead. But it seems like once you get in there, while it's not as big and there's not as much money, it would seem like if you're specialized in customer intimacy and kind of quality over quantity, right, around the contracting opportunities.
That's what I talk about because when I was on the staff side, when you find a company that brings great people that really help enable the organization, either from a supports perspective, a technical perspective, or building things, those are companies you want to continue to work with. And you get yourself into a place where they're coming to you for, hey, can you help us with this? And that's the place you want to be as a company. And it's really getting in there and building those relationships. And that takes both the people and internally that are there, building that on a day-to-day basis. But it's also, whether it's your BD team, your sales team, or your leadership team, getting in there and just continually building those relationships and getting that feedback on, hey, how are things going? That's critical. And that's always going to be the case internally. You get a good name and people want to continue to work with you, and you deliver, you bring the right things. It's just like anywhere else, but it's like you said, once you're in there and you're doing a good job, it makes it easier to expand out and grow.
Yeah. So I think for companies in our community that really truly do have great teams and great management systems and strong technology, and you're not in with the agencies yet, I think talking to a guy like Joe might make sense, because you want to get in where competition be more limited, obviously, and you want to be part of a cool mission. It sure sounds like an interesting place in the government to be right now.
Absolutely.
So what other changes do you see? We're going to shift to the future. What other changes there's changes to contracting across the government. I got to imagine they're even more focused in an area like the CIA. What other changes do you see going on right now that are going to impact this area of government?
Okay, from a technology perspective, just like everywhere else, AI is going to impact the organization, both from a process perspective, an operational perspective. When you think about it if you're out there collecting, you're collecting volumes and volumes and volumes of data, you need a way to process that data, go through that data, see if there's relevant information in that data so we can get to the right people to then decide whether it's actionable intelligence that can then be used either for going back after something, someone, or someplace, or it's helps enable the analytical mission and enabling the policymakers' decisions. So there's that part of it. And I think over the next 2 to 3 years, that how do you build those AI workflows are going to be critical. It's hard to get systems inside. It's hard to get systems accredited. It's hard to get them built out and going. And so the more you can do that on a smaller scale and then start building on that, I think is a really near-term step for AI. AI is going to be used and is being used on some of the harder problems. There's the SIGINT side of the house where you're collecting signals. like on the NSA side where you're collecting all kinds of other things. How do you use those tools to go through that data? And then quantum, I think, is a very important and interesting technology that is getting there. And I think there's going to be this inflection in the next 3 to 5 years, both with being able to scale quantum, but also on the AI side where you have these two things converging. That's just going to make it it's just going to blow up even more. Because you're going to be AI is going to be able to train in a way that it hasn't been able to be used before. And so we're going to get to places that we can't even imagine right now. And so how do we position ourselves for that? Government doesn't move that fast. And, as agile as the agency is, there's still a bureaucracy. And so how do we position ourselves for that?
But they got to be ahead of everybody else. I would hope, right? That they're embedding with these technology. They must have a better idea. I mean, the AI that we see now, I imagine they've been seeing that several years ago, right? And the quantum we're beginning,
The other thing about the agency that we haven't really talked about is part of what we do is also understanding what other countries are doing. And that's not just traditionally it was, what are their foreign policy decisions? What are their leadership decisions? Those types of things. Now it's evolving and has evolved for many years into such things as, what is China doing in AI? What is China doing in the semiconductor world? What is China doing in the quantum space? What is China doing in the biological space? And there are other countries too. It's not just China. It's just China is our biggest competitor in that space. And so these are things that the agency also does. We have to understand, one, what they're doing, and then also looking at the technologies that they're doing to understand what they're saying. Does it actually align to what is actually happening? And so that may be looking at their AI models and saying, yeah, they are farther ahead of us, or in the quantum space, they are farther ahead of us in the semiconductor space. No, or yes, they are farther ahead of us. And what is the reality of what they're saying versus what they're talking about? So those are also very important places that the agency looks at technology. It's not just on how do we use the technology. And so that's where you might have an expertise, and your expertise is used both for offensive and defensive purposes. That's just how the agency works.
It's going to change the nature of all the new Hollywood CIA movies, because it's no longer be these handsome, muscular guys running around in leather jackets. It's going to be technology nerds that can get in and understand algorithms and AI, right?
Yeah. The Matrix, go back to The Matrix. That was a good movie.
It all goes back to The Matrix somehow.
Yeah.
Let's look forward a little bit, Joe. We're in the beginning of 2026, believe it or not. Let's go ahead 3 years. So we're in the beginning of 2029. We're through this current administration, might be a different administration, a similar administration. We don't know, but election has just happened. What do you see happening in the Intel community, in the IC, and the CIA? What's going on, particularly as it pertains to government contracting? What's the landscape look
like? Hopefully that contracting space is a lot more optimized for the technology space. I think 3 years in government terms is long enough to be able to help evolve that. So I'm hopeful that will be the case along with everybody else. I think our priorities are going to be probably very similar to what they are now. We're just going to be getting closer to those time frames on the AI side and the quantum side that are going to be true game changers. Because the other thing about quantum, as you probably are well aware, and a lot of other folks are probably well aware of, which is really relevant on the intelligence side, is once that power and speed of quantum comes online, all of that information that's being collected can now be broken. That encryption can now be broken. And so that's a big inflection point. The governments have to be preparing themselves for that. And there are some standards out there that they're supposed to be starting putting in place for the quantum encryption. So I think those things are big evolutions that are going to be happening and happening in the next 3 years that are going to be really, really relevant. As I said, I think the priorities will be more or less the same. They might evolve a little bit. But I think that's where I see things in the next 3 years.
Well, look, it's I thought we were going to talk about running around catching the bad guys, but this focus on technology that you bring it's chilling, it's interesting, and I'm glad they have people like you that have been helping lead this, and now having people like you that can actually help on the industry side. I think it's great. Everybody do it. Talk about what's the one word you would choose, kind of your gut feeling about the future of the government contracting in this IC space. What's the word you would use to describe it?
Partnership. I think companies need to make money, and the government needs to function. And the government can't function without the contracting space. And that requires a partnership, because if the contracting workforce is not evolving, then it doesn't allow the staff side to the government side to also evolve. And I think that's where training for the future of how to use these future AI tools, bringing them into the workforce, those are really critical pieces of the partnership of ensuring that we all get to where we need to be from an intelligence perspective.
It's got to be a partnership between government and industry, partnerships within industry. So these new technologies can get into government by working with other companies, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And having been on the government side, they're not always easy to work with. And that's not because they're not nice people. It's just because they got busy jobs to do, and they want to focus on things that they have to focus on the things they need to do, and they don't always have time to focus on things that don't seem relevant. And so you have to be relevant, and you have to come into a conversation and show you're relevant right from the start, so you get their attention. It's not just you got a great 1 hour meeting and then there's nothing goes beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating space. We could talk forever. I didn't get to ask you about like the coolest, most crazy thing you saw during your career. Maybe we'll do that over a beer sometime. But Joe, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being part of our community, for being one of our precision experts. Thanks for spending time today to be on our podcast. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So, hey, to our audience out there, hope you enjoyed the episode. Not many people get a chance to sit down with the former CIA career executive, SES type. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Check us out on all the different podcast channels. We're out there. Share this with your friends. Put on your social media. Help spread the word. We got a lot of smart, brilliant people that are tapping into this platform. And so for everybody out there, we'll see you next week on our next episode. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. You can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.